In 1981, America's school cafeterias were hit by a billion-dollar budget cut and a mountain of surplus cheese, literally 500 million pounds. Overnight, lunch trays across the country turned into a playground for commodity science experiments. Ketchup proposed as a vegetable, microwaved mystery meat, and foods almost no one could identify. This isn't some cafeteria horror story. It's the real, barely believable history behind 10 school lunches from the 80s that were straight up wrong. But just how did government stockpiles and budget chaos end up shaping the weirdest meals a generation ever faced? The answer starts with a cold economic shock, and the consequences were unforgettable. Federal budget cuts in 1981 didn't just shrink school lunch menus. They rewired the entire cafeteria economy. With a single $1 billion reduction, the USDA's National School Lunch Program was forced to swap ambition for survival, trading fresh ingredients for whatever could be bought in bulk and stored for months or even years. The Commodity Credit Corporation, a government agency created to stabilize farm prices, suddenly became the unlikely architect of childhood meals. Its warehouses, some carved out of limestone caves beneath Kansas City, were packed with over 500 million pounds of surplus cheese by the early 80s. These blocks, stamped with plain government labels, arrived at schools in 5-pound bricks, sometimes still cold from the caves. Lunch staff remember the routine. Cut, shred, melt, repeat. The cheese went into everything. Pizza, sandwiches, macaroni, even poured over canned vegetables to mask the taste. But cheese was only part of the story. The USDA's surplus program also delivered mountains of canned corn, mystery meat logs, and processed commodities that had to be used, no matter how uninspiring. Cafeterias received shipments based on what the government needed to move, not what kids wanted to eat. School cooks, many with decades of scratch cooking experience, found themselves opening cans and slicing shrink-wrapped blocks instead of peeling carrots or roasting chicken. The goal was simple: fill every tray with the required calories, using whatever arrived on the loading dock that week. Food manufacturers and institutional suppliers saw an opportunity. Companies like Kraft and Schreiber Foods transformed government cheese into sliced packs and sauce blends, while other vendors rolled out frozen entrees designed for maximum shelf life. By the mid-80s, over 60% of school lunch entrees were pre-cooked or frozen, delivered in bulk, and reheated in large convection ovens or steam tables. Some cafeterias experimented with new equipment, commercial microwaves, for those who could afford them. But the real revolution was in the menu itself. Processed foods, designed for speed and storage, replaced recipes that had once been made from scratch. The cafeteria line became a conveyor belt for commodity science, where a block of surplus cheddar could travel from a Kansas City cave to a lukewarm pizza slice in less than a week. For the kids, the result was a tray full of surprises. One day, it might be grilled cheese, the next a slab of pizza with a crust that could double as a sponge. Lunchroom staff did their best to make it appetizing, sometimes adding extra cheese or butter to hide blandness. But with budgets slashed and pantries overflowing with government goods, the rules of lunch had changed. School cafeterias became the final stop in a national experiment, one where every saved in Washington echoed through the clatter of trays and the taste of every bite. In September 1981, the U.S. Department of Agriculture published a new set of school lunch rules in the Federal Register that would become infamous almost overnight. Buried in the official language was a proposal that sent shockwaves through kitchens, classrooms, and late-night talk show monologues. Condiments like ketchup and pickle relish could be counted as vegetables to meet the minimum nutrition requirements. The phrase minimum nutritional value took on a whole new meaning. Suddenly, a squirt of ketchup on a hamburger or a spoonful of relish next to a hot dog was enough to check a government box labeled vegetable serving. Nutritionists and parents howled. Headlines everywhere lampooned the idea. The Washington Post declared, USDA not only has egg on its face, but ketchup too. Senator John Hines, yes, that Hines, stood in Congress and declared, ketchup is a condiment. This is one of the most ridiculous regulations I ever heard of. Even USDA officials tried to distance themselves, with G. William Hoagland insisting, it's an insult to me and to school lunchroom officials to say that we would even consider forcing kids to eat ketchup as a vegetable. But the proposal was real enough to ignite a national embarrassment. Editorial cartoons showed children with trays piled high with ketchup packets. News anchors joked about the emperor's new condiments. School lunch directors, already scrambling to stretch shrunken budgets, wondered if they'd be expected to serve French fries and ketchup as a balanced meal. The uproar was so fierce that USDA officials withdrew the rule less than a month later, on October 2, 1981. But the damage had been done. Ketchup as a vegetable became the punchline that defined an era of cafeteria shortcuts and policy absurdities. For students, this was more than a headline. It was a sign that the grown-ups had officially given up on making lunch make sense. The bar had been set so low that a condiment could pass for a serving of produce. Cafeteria trays might still hold a scoop of canned peas or a spoonful of corn, but everyone knew those vegetables were there to satisfy paperwork, not palates. The new rules didn't just lower expectations, they erased them. Lunch became a game of meeting the bare minimum, and every kid who stared down a lukewarm burger with a stripe of ketchup knew it. If you survived the ketchup era, hit like and subscribe. And tell us in the comments, what's the weirdest thing your cafeteria ever tried to pass off as a vegetable? Because after this, nothing was off the table. Pizza Day was the crown jewel of the 1980s lunchroom. Not because the food was good, but because it was pizza, at least in name. The classic rectangular slice, delivered frozen by giants like Scheen's and Tony's, was engineered for cafeteria survival. Each piece measured about an inch thick, with a crust so dense it could soak up a milk spill and still bounce back. The cheese came courtesy of those 5-pound government bricks, shredded and scattered over a layer of sauce that tasted faintly of oregano and desperation. Sometimes there were cubes of pepperoni, sometimes just a dusting of mystery meat, but always the same chewy texture. Even lukewarm, this pizza inspired a cafeteria ritual. Kids would trade away their fruit cocktail or Jell-O cubes just to score an extra slice. The bravest would smuggle packets of ranch or hot sauce from home, trying to mask the blandness. Lunch ladies wielded industrial spatulas, sliding trays in and out of convection ovens, hoping the edges would crisp before the lunch bell rang. But the real secret was in the supply chain. By 1985, Schwann's had contracts with school districts across the country, delivering par-baked rectangles by the truckload. The recipe was pure efficiency: white flour dough, processed cheese blend, and just enough sauce to keep the USDA happy. No one asked for seconds, but no one skipped pizza day either. Then there were the patties: Salisbury steak, hamburger, pork, labels didn't matter. These oblong discs arrived frozen, stacked in plastic sleeves, ready to be reheated and disguised under a ladle of brown gravy. The real trick was in the filler. USDA guidelines allowed up to 30% soy protein by weight, so every bite was a gamble between beef and something that tasted like damp bread. Some days the patty would glisten with a sheen that no one could quite explain. Others, it would crumble at the touch of a fork, leaving behind a trail of grayish crumbs. Kids invented their own tests: poke it, trade it, or drown it in ketchup. Lunchroom legends spread about what, exactly, went into the mix, but one thing was certain: no one could ever tell. These entrees set the bar for what counted as normal. Prawns had pre-cooked and reheated. They became the baseline against which that all other lunchroom horrors were measured. The texture was part of the experience. A spongy crust here, a grainy patty there. For cafeteria staff, it was a daily puzzle: how to make government commodities edible without breaking the bank. For kids, it was a lesson in resilience, creativity, and the art of the trade. If you ever swapped your pudding for an extra slice of rectangle pizza, hit like and subscribe. And drop your best cafeteria barter story in the comments, because in the 80s, lunch wasn't just a meal. It was a negotiation. Sloppy Joes in the 1980s cafeteria were less a sandwich and more a dare. A spoonful of sweet, sticky sauce and ground beef would hit the bun, instantly soaking it into a limp sponge. By the time you made it to your seat, half the filling had already oozed onto your tray. The real challenge was keeping your shirt clean and your dignity intact. Napkins were useless. Some kids tried to eat them with a fork. Others just gave up and scooped with their hands. Fish sticks brought their own drama, especially on Fridays. CPAC, the frozen seafood giant, ran 1985 ads promising crispy golden flavor. But in the lunchroom, the reality was a pale, soggy rectangle with a faint whiff of the ocean. Catholic schools served them religiously, but even public schools couldn't escape the tradition. The fish sticks breading would peel off in sheets, leaving behind a soft, gray interior that dared you to take a bite. For some, the taste lingered longer than the lesson after lunch. If you remember the smell, you probably still avoid the frozen food aisle. Tater tots, on the other hand, were pure gold. Or Ida's 1986 pitch deck called them America's favorite finger food. And in the cafeteria, they were more than a side. They were currency. 2 tots could buy you a pudding cup. 4 might score a chocolate milk on a good day. The crispier the tot, the higher its trade value. Kids hoarded them, hid them under napkins, and formed alliances to boost their bargaining power. Tots were the great equalizer. Everyone wanted more, and everyone had something to trade. Dessert was the final frontier. Pudding cups, Jell-O cubes, and fruit cocktail with a single cherry on top set the stage for daily negotiations. The hierarchy was clear. Pudding trumped Jell-O, chocolate milk beat regular, and the lone cherry was worth its weight in gold. Some kids would trade their entire lunch for a prized dessert, while others tried to game the system by stashing extras for later. The cafeteria was a marketplace, and dessert was the ultimate prize. Lunch wasn't just about eating. It was about dodging disasters, making deals, and surviving whatever the tray had in store. Kids learned the art of the trade, the agony of a dropped sloppy Joe, and the thrill of scoring an extra tot. If you ever risked your shirt for a bite of cafeteria sloppy Joe, or built your social empire on tater tot trades, hit like and subscribe. And tell us, what was your top-tier lunchroom currency? Because the next course gets even messier. By the late 1980s, the cafeteria wasn't just a battleground for mystery meat and tater tot trades. It was turning into a playground for corporate America. School districts, desperate for something kids actually wanted to eat, started signing contracts with the biggest names in fast food. In 1989, Pizza Hut and McDonald's both inked deals to bring branded lunches straight into the lunch line. Suddenly, Pizza Hut Day was circled on every kid's mental calendar. The rectangular slices were swapped out for a round, logo-stamped pie, and cafeteria trays glowed with the promise of real fast food, at least for 1 day a week. Book it. Stickers appeared on classroom walls, promising free personal pan pizzas for reading books, while McDonald's Happy Meals began popping up in select schools, complete with branded wrappers and the occasional toy. Administrators saw it as a win. Attendance jumped on Pizza Hut Day, and even the pickiest eaters lined up early. Brand reps rolled in with banners and coupons, turning the lunchroom into a marketing event. The cafeteria, once ruled by government cheese and surplus cans, was now a testing ground for corporate influence. Parents debated whether fast food in schools was a treat or a Trojan horse. But for students, it was simple. This was the lunch they'd been waiting for. The rules of the game had changed. The line between cafeteria food and the drive-thru was getting blurry, and every tray was a billboard for something bigger than lunch. Would kids today even believe you could get a Pizza Hut slice in the school cafeteria? Only those who lived it know the answer. Imagine dropping a tray of 1980s cafeteria food into a modern lunchroom. Would today's kids even recognize it as lunch? Allergy policies alone would send half the menu straight into detention. Peanut butter bars, mystery nut toppings, even the classic carton of chocolate milk could trigger a phone call home. And then there's the sodium. According to current USDA rules, school lunches can't go over 1,225 milligrams of sodium for middle schoolers. In the 80s, a single tray could pack in 1,700 to 2,300 milligrams without anyone blinking. That's about 30% more salt per meal. And nobody was counting. Now picture a Gen Z student unwrapping a rectangle of pizza with a crust thicker than their phone, or poking at a patty that's 1/3 soy and 2/3 mystery. TikTok taste tests of retro school lunches usually end with shock, a grimace, and a lot of water. The idea of trading tater tots for pudding cups might sound fun, but the reality, lukewarm fish sticks and canned peas, would be a viral challenge, not a daily ritual. Social media would turn every tray into a meme. One soggy, sloppy Joe could spark 1,000 reaction videos. But for 80s kids, this was just lunch. No hashtags, no filters, just the daily gamble of what the lunch line had in store. Could anyone today survive a week of 80s cafeteria cuisine? That's a question only the bravest would want to answer. In 1981, the U.S. government cut $1 billion from school lunch funding, sending 500 million pounds of surplus cheese and processed commodities into cafeterias nationwide. Those decisions, documented in USDA reports and congressional hearings, set the stage for the wild era of rectangular pizza, soy-boosted patties, and the infamous ketchup as vegetable debate. Kids faced mystery meats and freezer-burned fish sticks, not by choice, but as a direct result of shifting federal priorities. Yet, as shown by 1985 cafeteria contracts and 1989 fast food tie-ins, these lunches became a shared culture, traded, joked about, and remembered. Today, USDA sodium caps are 30% lower, and allergy rules are stricter. But the full nutritional impact of 80s lunches remains debated. What's clear is that these insane meals shaped more than taste buds. They captured a moment when policy, pop culture, and childhood collided on a plastic tray. The lunch line may have changed, but the memories are real, and every tray still tells a story.